doubted that he would do it. Not anymore. The West warned Vladimir Putin was about to attack. He said he had no such plans. That fiction now utterly exposed. Explosions right across this vast country. In Ivano-Frankivsk, in the far southwest, a missile struck an airport. Unverified images from Ukraine's northern and southern borders seem to show columns of Russian armor entering from Belarus and Crimea. Within hours, Russian tanks were reported to be on the streets of Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. Whatever Russia says, this attack will not be surgical. To the east of Kharkiv, emergency workers battle to control fires in residential buildings hit by rockets. The number of civilian casualties is rising. At Mariupol in the south, another airport on fire. This country's civilian infrastructure is being heavily struck. There are no more flights in or out. A glance at the map shows a country under attack from east to west, north to south. Earlier, a snarling Russian leader said this was all in self-defense and warned Ukrainians to lay down their arms.
We will strive for the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. Russia cannot feel safe, develop, and exist with a constant threat emanating from the territory of modern Ukraine.
In Kiev, Ukraine's embattled president, who must now fear for his job, appealed to the world.
Putin started a war against Ukraine, against the whole democratic world. He wants to destroy my country. He wants to destroy our country, everything we have been building, what we live for.
So far, all the signs are that this attack is working out exactly the way Western leaders have been warning for weeks. The country is being attacked from all directions, and the fear now has to be that some of those Russian troops are heading here to the capital. Some people aren't waiting to find out what happens next. The roads out of Kiev jammed with traffic.
Oh, same as it ever was, right? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. And welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. And, whoa, what's that? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. Hi, I'm your Sensei Al Bob, your griot, just waking up here. What do we got? Oh, yes, head, yes, not ginger. Fingers, yes, arms, legs. Oh, yes, they're all there, seemingly. You know, what is that? Oh, it's a shadow. Okay, there we go. That's charging. But for how long? Oh, we got about a couple hours here. Oh, war, never-ending war. You know, the old crone told me that, you know, it's the same old same, you know, and it's up to us to change. You know, we have to be the change we want to see in the world. We can't just keep going on with the same old drone. Want you know, how am I going to pay my bills? What am I going to do? Should I go here? Should I go there? No, wherever you are, there you are, you know. That was one of the first lessons my grandmother taught me. She had 28 rules, right? One that I live by is, live like a millionaire, don't be one. don't have to work at one, you know. You should never work for anyone that they do not need you more than you need them, right? Bottom line about anything is, within a monetary world, if you don't buy things you don't need, then you're not going to be stressed out by how you're going to pay your bills, right? And you see a lot of homeless people on the street. I remember when I went to countries in Asia that they had beggars on the street. And in, Africa, in North Africa. And they were part of society, and people kind of took care of them, but not here in the West, And in Western Europe, the folks who are in need of a safety net, they are basically monetized, right? Used, collected, and but you have to be. I mean, I have three major rules. Doctor, do no harm, right? Doctor, that used to be my nickname, Doctor. When I was in Australia and I first stumbled over Doctor Who, because I used to fix things all the time. And I used to, not dress like Doctor Who, but almost, but, in a quirky kind of way. And I used to fix things all the time, right? I had my sonic screwdriver, right? And I did have a sonic screwdriver. And people, when they said, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, that's a sonic screwdriver." And I never called myself doctor, but people started calling me doctor. And then when I worked at Brookhaven, everyone was a doctor. When I first really got to be called doctor, it was when I was 21 and I got this gig to be the director of the theater department at the College of Newark of Engineering. It was a state school right there on College Avenue, right next to Rutgers and right across the street from Newark High School up on the hill. And, I got the job because they wanted Lester Polikoff, world's most famous theater designer and set designer and lighting designer. And he, was the house designer for Vivian Beaumont Theater and the Boston Opera and a number of Broadway houses and Carnegie Hall. And I was his best boy. And that's how I got to be the master electrician at Carnegie Hall. I was his best boy, right? And we would do, every show done in there was done through Lester. And they didn't really have technical directors, but I was his best boy. So I did all of that. And I rewired the backstage because I rewired the backstage of the Fillmore East because it was an old house, things kept blowing. It was wired for the 1920s and did not, stand up to. It had plenty of power coming in the building, but the distribution was like 1920s. Knife switches and plug fuses and all the things were down in the basement and lines running hundreds and hundreds of feet, resistance up the kazoo and terrible grounding. And so loads of hums on everyone's amp. So I had to fix all that and I redid it. And first we, Billy Graham, who owned the Fillmore East and Fillmore West, and was a great promoter, did most of the shows. He was the man for the Grateful Dead and Janis Joplin and the Holding Company and Jimi Hendrix and Joni Mitchell and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and about 50 other bands, right? And he was a major player in a lot of labels, A&R and EMI and a number of others. And he was like the quiet guy of power, and he was my boss. I mean, my real boss, my supervisor boss, was a guy named Bob Goddard. who started a Joshua Light show and Pig Lights, and he did all this show. So, you know, like Woodstock's a good example, right? Woodstock would not have been even known to have existed because if it wasn't for Billy Graham, who basically fronted all the money. His nephew was the guy who was the poster child, the producer, because he grew up in Woodstock, because Billy had a recording studio up there, and his sister and his brother-in-law and a few other people had a compound up there, and that's why Woodstock was Woodstock. It was an artist compound. And it was a beautiful little town, but still full of itself. And Billy Graham was the only person who had any real juice and was able to do things. And he you never saw him, you know. He was always behind the scenes, right? And that's, you know, he was my mentor of being behind the scenes, getting things done, right? So he would say, hey, Al, go take care of that. I would, right? No muss, no fuss, no big deal. And I had 3 or 4 guys who were stage hands. That's what we call them, stage hands, or grips, right? But they weren't roadies. Roadies were the guys who were on the road, who came in with the band and unload the truck and did that. And me, I was the electrician. You know, I made sure everything worked. No one got electrocuted. There was no buzz, right? And so that was along with being the dude, you know, that. So in the theater world, Herbert Berghoff studio, I worked there. Uda Hagen and Herbert Berghoff. I was HB Studios, TD. And, you know, this was all between the ages of 16 or 14. 14 is when I went to hang at HB Studios on 10th and Bank and over in the West Village, when the West Village was pretty interesting. I mean, it still is pretty interesting, but it was truly interesting then. And so Bob Goddard's building, his studio, his business, place of business was right in the middle. Total tradesman. Hey, buddy. And what are you a tradesman of? Not total trade, tool tradesman, right? And I'd like a definition, Dr. Tool. So when I was called doctor for the first time, I was like 22, maybe 24. And I had come back from robot maintenance engineer. Hey, Dr. Tool, do you remember that TV show, Robot Wars? One of my electrical helpers, Deb, what was Deb's last name? Well, she helped start Robot Wars, the TV show. And she really had to, you know, she was just a street urchin living in an abandoned building. And she's one of the 127 godchildren that, hey, come here. You know, you're not going to get involved in that. What I need is a helper, electrical helper. Here, hold this, do that. Here's how you wire up a outlet. Here's how you do a switch. Here's how you, and she just took to it like a duck to water. And she went deeper and deeper. Like within 6 months, she could wire anything, right? And I got her into, a friend of mine worked for Carnegie Mellon, right? Manufacturing doodads at Zelfs. Zelfs was an amazing spot in Soho. It had, because Soho, the city, the town, that factory, everything from 6th Avenue to Broadway, from Houston to Canal, that's Soho, south of Houston, right? And those were all, that was the industrial age of the Dutch, like in the 1680s, right? 1740s. You know, they built these buildings that were close to the river on either side. It was right in the middle. And so stuff came up the Hudson, stuff came up, or down the Hudson and up, you know, down the Hudson and up the East River. And so first those were more or less warehouse, and then they became factories, and then they, you know, just assembling stuff. Then they became automated factories. meaning the the making of cloth, right? The looms, and steam engines went in there. And I said, I do not. But that's nice. Maybe one day I'll be working with Sophia. Go to Japan. You can already have sex with a robot. Be more satisfying than most humans because it doesn't have the hang-ups. Meaning, the thing about I don't think about sex at all. It's not even on my radar. It never has. But when some young lady comes over and says, "Hey, you're cute," scratches that itch, they know what they want. I'm all in, right? I'm there to please them to the point they go, "Wow, never had that before." And then we have a great time for however long we have a great time. Deb, on the other hand, was all business. I mean, she didn't think about sex. She was just Miss Electric. And then again, like I said, I turned her on to a friend of mine who manufactured things, motherboards and not knockoffs, but things that nobody else made, right? And so Soho was this industrial age all the way up to the Korean War. They used to knock out widgets in Soho factories for World War II, for the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and over in what was and is the Garment District and a few other areas in Manhattan and Queens, and they would manufacture the widgets there because the big buildings had big floors that could take big machines that did pounding. And Zelf had his father had this machine shop with lathes and things like Bridgeports. So Dr. Toole, do you know what a Bridgeport is? I mean, it's old school, but before 3D printing, a Bridgeport was like the next thing. It could cut gears. It could cut really exotic things. It had milling devices that went in 360 degrees at the same time. So it's called a Bridgeport. Yes. So he knows what a Bridgeport is. So Zelf had stuff like that, and he had spray metallizing. Zelf did material handling before, like in the 60s and 70s. I mean, he was a wizard. And so he was Grandpa Stahl and Zelf were buds. They came from the same age, same time, doing the same stuff. And Zelf manufactured gizmos for Tesla, right? And I had Tesla's laboratory. It was called Mohawk Electric, the building itself. If you were to Google, let's see, where is Mohawk Electric, you would find it right there in the corner of, I think it's Duane and Hudson. And Hudson kind of goes up to where 8th Avenue starts on the other side of Canal. And Hudson was where the Hudson River is. Today, Hudson is about 1.5 miles to the Hudson. That's how much they filled in, right? And that's Lower Manhattan. It's all goop, right? It's not, you don't get to the granite foundation neck of the woods until 34th Street or above 16th Street. Pretty much everything below 16th Street, Union Square, is muck, right? With them at Aerospace Shop. Yep, exactly. So that was Zelf, and we used to make gizmos. So I used to make gizmos like I work for a lot of, I work for the entertainment business, right? Everything from movies to titty bars, everything in between, theaters, discos, you name it, I did it. So a lot of those things had one of a time thing, especially discos that had before, SCRs, before digital controls, everything was mechanical. So I would make these mechanical, amazing things that did a ton of shit that made the effect, That was real magic. I mean, now you put everything on a little chip, and it's so sick. So I was one of the first guys who, oh wow, SCR, yeah, this is the way to go. Instead of a variac that made, a hum, SCR is really quiet, right? And that's a semiconductor that controls a voltage regulation, right? For those who don't know what a SCR is, and so when I was 24 in 1974, when I just got back from New Mexico and working in the nuclear industry and seeing I've seen stuff that, from my age, 72, in my mid 70s, not 72, but past that, I've seen some I'm like the Forrest Gump of, right? I'm not as old as Doctor Who, but I've seen a lot of stuff, and what I've seen, that most of what we're experiencing right now is a parasite. We've got parasites. We got parasites. The people that hear things, they got parasites in their head. Meaning, the paranormal is right here, right? And our belief, horses have these big blinders because they have eyes that can see everything. And so they can get skitzed, right? So that's why they have blinders, right? And so do we. We have that. It's called belief, right? And addiction. Those are our two blinders: belief and addiction. Addiction to convenience is the number one addiction, right? We'll sell our mother's soul for a better parking spot. We'll sell our children, for a better location on the office floor, in a better cubicle, So there I was working for Lester Puckhoff, an amazing designer. And he was Joe Melziner. Joe Melziner invented modern theater. He brought electricity to theater. Before that, they had candles and gas lanterns. And they also had what today is a Super Trooper. And all it is the welding, DC high voltage, makes an arc, right? Very bright. It has these two things, and you kind of move them until you get the spark, and then you get it to the spark is white hot, and then you got a spotlight. That's what you got. And the Super Trooper is like 8 feet long. It's got all kinds of colored lenses and stuff to get the effect, right? Gets really hot. It burnt down a lot of theaters before they figured it out. And that's I was between those two worlds, that world of the 1890s and the 21st century. That's where I was. And I saw all of this stuff that was in between it, especially when I was up in the National Laboratories. So, when I got this gig to be the director of this theater department in Newark College of Engineering, I was waiting online, and everybody, all the professors, they had their herringbone, their tweedy jackets and little bow ties and their white shirts and their corduroys and their sand shoes. And, I had a pair of jeans, a Velvet Underground t-shirt, leather jacket, mirrored sunglasses, and cowboy boots. I just come back from the South. I had my Tony Lama cowboy boots that I bought at the airport getting out of Dodge. And so, I'm waiting online, and everyone's a doctor. It's an engineering school. Everyone's a doctor. Everyone's a PhD, right? And so, the guy looks at my paperwork, and he, it's a Polaroid thing that's making the picture. So he just changes my name there, puts me in a chair, sits me down, little light on my forehead, smile, click, bang. And that goes into this thing that types everything out onto the card, then laminates it with a picture on it, and Zingo, he hands it to me like 3 minutes later, right? And it says, Double Dr. DiMartino, Double Doctor. Al Bob, right? And so everyone called me Doctor. Some people call me DD, Double Doctor, right? And it was very interesting. So I had all these people I worked in were my mentors. Grandpa Stahl. The first guy to have a master electrician's license in the fucking world. He was Nikola Tesla's bench electrician. He told me the story about George H. Bush. George H. Bush, that was his name. He was Gustav. His father was a Russian electrical engineer who worked for Tesla and basically was Stalin's spy. Now, if that guy stole stuff, it wouldn't look good. But he had George H. that ran all over the place like a little monkey, and that's what Tesla called him, a cheeky monkey. And he, a little monkey boy, George H. would just pocket stuff. And his father's best friend was the man with the yellow hat. He was the, fearless leader. He was the Russian control in America, right? He's the guy who, General Groves gave the blueprints to hand over to Stalin after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, so the Russians would be a credible enemy. So what you're going to see, talk about Russia as a credible enemy, that, they're going to rush across the Ukraine. And the Ukraine isn't really stepping up to it because they can't. But what they're going to do is what the, whatchamacallit did to the Russians, the Afghanis did to the Russians. And that was, eat them alive, right? We've given everyone a gun in Ukraine, right? And basically, the smart folk have gotten out. The people with money had left, The other people who said, oh, we're going to pretend that nothing's happening. And now they're like lining up to get the heck out of there. And that's going to be a mess. But they'll get out. The women and children will kind of get out. If Russia really does any terrible, they just, walked right into all of the Ukraine, and only 40 or so people have died. So, give or take, right? They can keep it under 300 in the next month. It'll be okay, right? And see, because the real deal about propaganda is that lies are best told with a lot of truth. If you, there's this thing called the Tavistock Institute, who I kind of worked for a guy who was part of that. And Bernays was Sigmund Freud's nephew, and he was Mr., split tongue. Hey, Alan. Best from Northern Ireland. Love the New Mexico story. Don't you have flee via Vegas? Yes, I left Vegas, in a cow. That's where I got the Tony Lama cowboy boots, right? And I had a couple pair. I bought a couple pair because Tony Lamas are the most, they make them for your feet, right? But not, and you had to pay for them up front. But not everyone, I don't know why, but a lot of cowboy boots don't get picked up. So you can go to a Tony Lama store and they'll have a section where you can buy the shoe that somebody didn't pick up and already paid for. So instead of costing back in those days $300, if Tony Lama still is around, I bet you their boots are in the thousands of dollars. But because they were unbelievably comfortable, it's just I used to sleep with them on, and they just supported every part of your foot. It was amazing. So I had a couple of pair because there was this in Grants, this titty bar / restaurant / nightclub / truck stop / hardware store / bank / post office / brothel slash barbershop slash whatever you want. I mean, it's the only real building in at least Grants. Everything else in Grants was a trailer, right? And like my bank, right? The bank in that place was owned by that guy, right? It's more like a confidence scheme. But the other, New Mexico National blah blah bank was a trailer. I mean, if you wanted to rob the bank, all I had to do is, put the trailer, hook it up to your pickup truck, and drive away with the bank. And on payday, that thing had $1 million or $2 million in it, easy, right? So anyway, they had a like cowboy store, and when I got my first paycheck, I put, I started up a checking account, and I already had one from Mr. Blue Bunny, his bank, and in New Mexico there were a lot of people who owned their own bank. It was quite interesting. It was straight out of It's a Wonderful Life and Mr. Potter's bank. My aunt's bank. So anyway, basically what I'm saying is that I've seen a tremendous amount of things, just because, like I said, I'm the Forrest Gump of interesting stuff. I just happen to be in the right place. If I have any real talent or gift, it's to be in the right place at the right time. Like right now, here, I'm talking to you guys, right? And we're up next to Stoll's Bakery in Metro Detroit. Yep. Italians, yeah. It's like Jones. Stoll is an Italian Jones. And they're all related too. I'm sure that bakery knew Mike Stoll in New York. He was pretty infamous in the Stoll crew. And so they're just almost like what's a good example? The Roma of the Gypsies. They're everywhere. And they're all related, I hung out with a lot of. So, Alan, have you hung out with any gypsies in Northern Ireland? Did Ireland, did England allow the gypsies to hang in Northern Ireland? Northern Ireland, I only went to a little bit because the places I was in, I kind of didn't. When I was in Dublin, I stayed in Dublin. Then I met the old crone, and she took me up to her mystery place near Sligo. Or not Sligo. What's the high point of west coast of Ireland where the mountains come down? It'll pop into my mind. I saw Sligo. It's some other place. But Sligo's on the west coast too, but more in the hinterlands. So Alan, the Northern Ireland. Were the gypsies there? Did you ever hang with any gypsies? Did you ever know any Romas? They're quite interesting because years after my experience with Archie on the West Coast and the Romas, because we just went from one group of Roma to the next, to the next, to the next, going up the West Coast, not on the coast road, but a little more on the wiggly small roads that were in the hills. And because we were looking for pyramids. And we kept bumping into these Roma crews who would set up a camp with their trailers and their cars and do scams on stupid people. And what is a stupid person? Someone who's greedy, selfish, ignorant, right? Who shouldn't be watching this show. And it says, is this for children? No, this show is not for, the childish of mind, and this show is strictly for entertainment, and this show is here to, you should save this. You should put this on your hard drives. You should put this on a instead of a semiconductor like a hard drive or a thumb drive. But you could do that. But I would suggest something like a CD-ROM because that's an optical saving mechanism. Let's see, Bob, while you're on a roll with stories, please tell us about meeting the alien at the U2 gig. Oh, one of those days. Right. So that was more or less not the U2s. U2 guys they're basically plants. All of entertainment world is control. Anybody who gets anywhere in the entertainment is owes somebody to something and is there as a control. You should go watch all of George Carlin's spiels about you're just owned. You have no freedom. Forget politics. I stopped voting in the 80s. I met George Carlin at a club, and he was quite interesting. And he was let's see, he's probably 20 years older than me. I was in my 30s, so he was in his 50s. I mean, he was he had been on Johnny Carson. He had done that. He had gone and done colleges and done his records. So he was well known. He was pretty famous. He had some money in the bank. And he, HBO hadn't quite started yet. Cable hadn't quite, cable was there, but really hadn't started. He hadn't done that. And he hadn't done any movies yet. He did a few pretty interesting movies. And his whole spiel was about how it's all a scam, and it is. So U2 is just a scam. I met those guys. They're like Crosby, Stills, Nash, just whiny bitches. Really, really, really. And a guy who is, whatever his name is, with the leather jacket and the big glasses. It's kind of like Sting, but not Sting. U2 is the name of a document you have when you're on welfare. But those guys were never on freaking welfare. Please. I mean, it's like Marx and Engels were in London living the high life because Mr. Rothschild was paying their tab to write Das Kapital. Right? But anyway, I had come back from working in the nuclear industry. I worked at Los Alamos, Sandias, Kirkland Air Force Base, you name it. I'd done it. Places out there that didn't have names, and saw other things, just things off the hook, and like that story that I was talking about where I got my cowboy boots coming back to New York. Basically, I came back to New York, and it was like I never left. It's like, okay, got right back into it, got back into the art scene, started doing cable TV, started, doing art again, helped put together a, the Una Bear Gallery. It was the last great hurrah of Soho. Soho stopped being Soho, the art collective community of brilliance, by 76. And I got back in 74, got the gig, I was working for Lester, got the gig in New Jersey. So that was, 74 and 75, 76. I was in New York, but I was working in Newark and, got into Newark and I was Kunta Kinte, like the lady who ran the theater department. The first year I got there, brand new theater department. I'm in charge. I'm a double doctor. Everyone's calling me doctor. They give me a budget. They give me X for employing 4 people and myself, and Y. For running the department, like materials to build sets and things of that nature. And I had 2, fix-it guys, maintenance men, janitors, whatever you want to call them, but they were more than janitors. And so the bottom line was I started out in the fall, I went over and saw the lady who ran everything. And she says, well, this is your budget, and this is how much you got to spend. And, by the way, you get 2 vehicles. And she goes, you know how to drive, don't you? And I said, sure. She should have said, you have a valid driver's license. I would have gone like this. But I said, sure. So I got a car and a pickup truck. And I used a pickup truck in New York for my business, and because it had a state license plate, right? Said state of New Jersey, state vehicle, had the state logo on both doors, right? and I had my double doctor ID with my picture on it with a state logo on it. And it, said my name and director of Newark College of Engineering. It said that in the theater department. It said like I was head of the whole friggin' engineering department. And so every time I would have anything to do with authority, I would hand them that ID, photo ID. And, this is before really they had photo IDs. And, oh, look, that is you. Yes. Oh, boy, double doctor. Oh, your head, and you run okay. So, I drove that car they gave me across America, so I start end of August, right? And I put out a syllabus of what courses are going to have. And basically, there was no one around to employ to do those courses. So I said to myself, self, I'm going to run everything and pay myself everything, right? So when it came time to go back to that lady and give her, the syllabus was already in the computer of this, been printed out for the students to see. And then she said, and the computer put my name for all the professors. She said, you're going to do it? I said, yep. She goes, well, we'll just pay you everything. So I got like $1,800 a week, right? And because it was state school, she said, we have a state credit union. You want to join the credit union? I said, sure. So just put the money into that. I said, yeah. She goes, so how do you want it? I said, well, so what do you mean? She goes, well, you can have a savings account or a checking account, or you can have both. And if you have both, then we give you a, what we call a debit card. I said, what's that? She goes, well, it's just like a credit card, but we don't charge you interest. It's your money. You got the money in the bank, thing works, right? And she goes, seemingly you're going to have a lot of money in the bank, so why don't you do that? And there were no banks had debit cards. No banks even had, computer banking. Some did, but anyway. So I said, sure. So $1,800 every week half went into my checking, the other half went into my savings. And because I was a new person, they put all the money that went in my savings went into a what do you call? A bond or something that had a lot better interest than just a savings account. So everything that went in there, instead of getting 1/2 of 1%, I was getting like 8% interest, right? Which was pretty darn good for those days. And it would go up as the interest went up, right? So anyway, so I basically started off, right, with great things. No one signed up for any class whatsoever. So I had all of these materials. So I built on the roof of the theater building a replica of Hugh Hefner's Chicago, California grotto, right? And where I'd have parties up there that were off the hook. And I was just up the hill from Rutgers, right? And I had these big binoculars and I could see everything that was going on. So when I'd see, and so there were fraternities and sororities and this happening and that happening. And I would go down, I was only 24, so I wasn't that much older than any of those kids there. And I just fit right in and say, hey, I'm going to have a party. See that big mirrored ball on top of the building over there? That's, just come in, go up, take the elevator up. And the elevator actually went up to the roof. Right? So it was like, couldn't be better, right? And so they just walk into the lobby, go to the elevator, hit the button, and went up to the second floor where the people could go, with the wheelchair into the balcony. And then the next floor was like classrooms and offices that were all around this part, and then the roof. Right? So there was nobody there. And so I still was running my electric business in New York, and I would take so the grotto was my apartment, my party house. I had a big, gigantic, you could get, like swimming pool up there, because the roof was all steel because it held up the grid. It could live, the grid could live 100 tons of scenery if it wanted to. So, I mean, it was, so, August, September, I built this, and, the guys who worked at the theater, they just loved it because we had a lot of fun. We drank a lot, smoked a lot. They got paid $22 an hour. They were union guys, and I didn't make them work that hard at all, right? So we did that and had parties, and it was just one amazing party after another, right? And we did some theater, right? We got the kids who were interested in it, but weren't in the, that guys, that school didn't have a theater department there. I think they had it Rutgers someplace else. But anyway, there were people who were interested in music and stuff. So we had shows on the thing, and it garnered some appreciation in the college itself because something cultural was always going on there. And on or about Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving, I had a big Thanksgiving dinner for everybody there up at the grotto. And it was, still warm-ish, not really cold. And then one day after Thanksgiving, it got cold. And I locked everything up, and I told the boys who worked there, okay, so just keep it semi-running. Don't let it, we're not going to, I'm going to mothball for a few weeks. I'm going to take a road trip. So there was a garage where, you loaded in stuff onto the main stage. I put the truck there, so it was safe. No one saw it, and I took the car cross country. Right. So November, December, January, February, March, and spring showed up. Right around then, and I came back for the next semester. Right. I had a great time. Drove all the way to California. And I just kept staying away from the winter. I kind of went northern with the car before, into Colorado, and went over there in the pass. It was still kind of nice. And, I went through Estes Park and a few other places, and came, into Washington, went to Seattle, came down the coast, went to San Francisco, went to LA, went down to Baja, went into Mexico. That was fun. And then drove through Mexico and popped into Texas, came up through Texas into New Orleans or Leicester, and came back, right? And so this was, and I showed back up, and I saw a lot of things that just kept popping in my mind of all the weirdness that I had seen, 2.5 years earlier, when I was working in the nuclear industry. And I kind of stayed away from them. I did go to Santa Fe. I did go to Madras. This was a mining town that had gone, it was really super duper whoop-de-doo, and then it hit the skids and everyone looking for gold in California. And when I was doing a line across New Mexico with this Mexican crew, we stumbled into this city out there in the middle of the desert. There was nobody there, but it was a big city. It probably looked like it had 20, 30,000 people at its heyday. It had a big main avenue. I mean, avenue, not a street, cobblestone avenue, brick and, stone buildings, 5-6 stories tall, had electricity, but not working. And we're linemen, right? So we found it because we found this one line that just went into the desert, and it had what is known as a dead return, meaning it was current there, but it was like a ghost current. So we had our meggers and we traced it, and that's how we found this town. And we weren't quite sure what was getting a load, but we found the ghost current. It's where it came from, this one wire coming out of the ground. And all we did was disconnect it from the system, poured tar on top of it, and then poured concrete on top of that. And, we built a form around the pipe, poured tar into it to insulate it, and then put concrete on it so it couldn't get touched. And then we just, there was a line, so from where we were working, to where the nearest line to this town was, like, quarter mile. And the poles were there. We just stuck insulators, put some wire, energized it all the way to that town. There was transformers that broke it down into distribution to the town. We lit it up, bingo, everything worked. Not only that, they had a water system. We energized that and it pumped water. It was like, really? And it had other accoutrements, the elevator in the big hotel where everything worked. So instead of sleeping, we had another 3 weeks to work. And instead of sleeping on the ground, we slept in this hotel. But the beds were made, had linen and pillows. And because it's the desert, it was dry. It was like sleeping, like they had just washed the stuff yesterday. It was like pretty freaking amazing. So we'd sleep in a bed for a couple of nights and then go to another room and sleep in another bed. And it was just truly an amazing place. We got some tanks of gas and hooked it up to the Garland stove that was in the kitchen of the hotel and cooked up a storm. And these guys could cook, so could I. And it was the best of times. The worst of times was when I was working at Kirkland Air Force Base, or when I worked for Kern McGee at the United Nuclear, Mount Taylor plant. So when I came back, Kendra, it's Bob. Ireland has more local versions of tinkers and travelers not related to gypsies ethnically. Yeah, this is true. It's a cultural thing in Ireland. But anyway, I was just asking Alan about Northern Ireland. It's Bonham. Yeah, I'm really not a big fan of Bonham. So, because he is a total spokesman for the globalist agenda, right? Pretty much, it's a globalist. What's going on in Ukraine is part of the globalist agenda. What's going on with Biden, globalist. Build Back Better, globalist agenda. Elon Musk, globalist. This is all a globalist, and they're double speeding this. They're 40 years ahead of schedule because they're scared that they're going to fail. Because it's a race between the general public waking up and them taking over, right? And pretty much every system. Why is Putin doing this? Because Russia's about to collapse, right? All of this is about to collapse, right? China is about to collapse. There's nothing that's sturdy about the system. And that's going to be the interesting thing. The unexpected consequence is what's going on, and whether. So there have been aliens here forever, and they've been good, bad, and indifferent. Just look at the Bible. The God of religion is the indifferent God, right? So that's the indifferent alien. The good aliens like Jesus Christ, Buddha, those guys, right? Trying to bring the good news, right? So anyway, so I took the college car across America, went and visited old friends, had loads of fun, had a lot. I was making $1,800 a week without having to do anything. It was just going straight into, and I had this card I could just swipe, get cash. It was pretty the American dream, living like a millionaire without having to be one, right? And they needed me more than I needed them because it was a hoax. They built this whole theater department that didn't, they spent millions of dollars. Somebody in the New Jersey legislature got paid in the back room to push a bill through it to build this, and some contracting mobster got the money to build the thing and blah, blah, blah. Then it had to look like it was being run, and I made it look like it was being run. I was spending every nickel they had set up for it, right? So I get back for this spring, and my first semester there, and I get the best rating of all 300 professors and workers in that whole university. I am number one best boy. And they have my picture of doubled, and it's up in the hall of good guys where the chancellor's office is. My picture is, best teacher of the semester, double doctor, Al Bob, mirrored sunglasses, Hawaiian shirt, my face, right? And there it is. And I get a bonus. I get 10% of what my weekly, so I got, of my that semester, whatever that was, I got 10% of it, right? And they just stuck that in, right? And I did everything right. I was part of this, I was part of that, and I spent every nickel of my budget, and I got not a single, no one complained because I wasn't there. It's easy to not get a complaint if you're not there. And the lights were still on, and the kids from across the way down the hill at Rutgers were putting on the, while I was gone for those, November, December, January, February, March, those 5 months, they were doing, concerts and things that Rutgers was paying for. But in that, and giving my boss, gave them money to use it. So, they thought I was the best guy in the universe. The lights were on, the budget was being spent, not a single complaint. I was doing cultural events for the city and the 2 colleges, and the school was making money off of that theater that they thought was going to be a dead duck, right? A white elephant, right? And it was being made popular, and a number of the students at that engineering school were enjoying the cultural events. And it was all under double Dr. Al Bob's nickel. I got all the credit for it. So I was made number one, the best, right? So I get back, I see my supervisor, and they're patting me on the back and, saying, oh, you've done a great job this semester. Everyone loves you. And I wasn't there for like 90% of it. I was there September and October, and I left. But still kept it running. That's how you need to do it. So I came back, and spring break happened, and I was staying with a friend of mine in the West Village. And I saw that I used to go from New York to my job by going up to Penn Station, taking Jersey Central train to Newark, and then taking the underground, which I thought was a subway, but it wasn't. It was just all of Newark is above ground, is just been lifted up. And the Newark that everyone thinks is Newark is like 40 feet above what was old Newark, and the things that people think are subway lines are actually trolley cars, right? Still down there. Anyway, so I then, I was talking to somebody at the cafeteria at Rutgers, and because the engineering school, and so I don't think they even had a student union. The theater was as close to that. So anyway, I basically was talking to this guy and about, I'm a New Yorker. He says, well, do you take the PATH train? PATH train? I knew about the PATH train, but I didn't know, I never really took it. And I said, no. He goes, well, you're in the West Village, aren't you? I said, yeah, well, I'm everywhere, but yeah, I kind of hang there. He goes, well, there is a line, a PATH line that goes right from 6th Avenue, right near McDougal Street, right to where the college is. And it costs 10 cents. I said, really? He goes, yeah, here, I'll walk you there. He went there, we took it, and it shot right, you didn't have to go all over the place. Like, instead of taking an hour and a half, it took all 20 minutes. And I said, oh, wow, now I can live in New York and get here, in 20 minutes for 10 cents. Not a problem. So, one of the places I hung out was Herbert Berghoff's studio, right? Another place I used to hang out, where I had a key to get into the building, and there was a room that I had that I could crash in, was there. And there was another, I was teaching, I was the alternative medicine professor at the Swedish Institute, which was on right next to HB Studios, which was on 10th Street. And then I had friends who lived up, I always forget the name of that street, the one that cuts from right across from the West Village over to East Village. McDougal's? No. McDougal? No. I forget. But anyway, I had a friend who lived over there, had a really nice building. I lived there, And again, I had a key to get in. And then I had a shop on 21st Street and 6th Avenue, which had been a big store. That whole area, Macy's was still there, Gimbel's was still there on 34th Street. But there were other stores that had been, like department stores, big stores. So those buildings were still there, and their ground floors were still there. So they had big windows and their high ceilings and big doors. But most of them were used as kind of low-end warehouses for the garment district, right? And there was a guy who, he had a machine that made cardboard boxes, right? And I used to fix that machine. It was like ancient machine that nobody wanted to touch. And that's how I learned how to read German, is that all these machines were made in Germany, like in the 1890s and early O's. And, and Grandpa Stahl, that was part of his big biz, was to do that, right? And so that, after he really retired, I picked up that business just to keep it in the family, right? Keep it going through the Stahl thing. So how I got my master electrician license in New York, you have to have 16 years of consecutive W-2 forms. And that's how they keep the electrical biz in the family, right? And so Mike Stahl and Grandpa Stahl kept me on the payroll for 16 years, even though I went to, prep schools and colleges and travel the world. They kept putting money, away, so I would have a W-2 form showing that I'd been working. Then, at 19, I had to, earlier than that, 17, I joined the IBEW, which Grandpa Stahl started. He just kind of said, you got to be in the union, you want to get the license, and this will, make your political connections. And I did. And I worked on the World Trade Center, so that's why I knew those airplanes didn't take down. You should read Architects and Engineers' Truth on 9/11, their report, like 20 zillion books. It's just the most scientific engineering, exactly what happened, instead of the congressional thing, which was like a comic book. The Congress used popular mechanics as their scientific base, right? The federal government has national laboratories. It has the Bureau of Standard and Measures, the most scientific entity there's going. It's got a ton of other, it's got the Smithsonian. It's got a ton of things that could have done a very good investigation on what happened to 9/11. Didn't do it. Same thing with Kennedy. Didn't do it. And, it wasn't until they did a little bit of it and they found that audio tape of Mike being open. And so, they had the technology to listen to that tape and get the acoustic thing of the shots that scientifically proved that the shots that were being shot at Kennedy came from 3 separate different directions. And the one that killed him came from a storm drain in front of the car. And that's why he first did this, and then, back of his head blew off, right? It's kind of hard to blow the back of your head off if you're shooting from the back, right? So all of this stuff is in plain sight. But because it's a scam, because it's, being run by Mr. Globaloney, we don't get to see any of it because the media, everything is run by, those guys, right? So anyway, get back to Bono, and who wasn't even there, right? So I get back for the spring semester again. No one signs up, so I'm there, but I have my I'm being in New York, and I got this truck that I can use for my business, and never gets towed because it's a state vehicle. I could be forget double park, I could be quadruple parked, and I would never get towed. So I'm living again the life of Riley, running my business, doing the things I want to do, not the stuff I have to do to pay my bills, because I have no bills. I'm not paying rent. I'm not in any place, right? The nicest place I have is on 21st Street, off of 6th Avenue. It's 3 stories tall. It's got front windows, got great light. I can go in and out 24/7. I made a nice bathroom in the back with a shower and a bathtub and a whole McGill. And the guys who own the store love the fact that he just, so I basically fixed everything they ever needed fixing. I mean, once I fixed, first I got to know them because I fixed all their machines so they really worked. And once I really fixed everything, and I just kept tweaking it so it didn't break. I never had to spend any real effort on keeping things going. But they love the fact that those machines worked all the frigging time, and they're making a lot of money. So the fact that I took up, 1,000 square feet, and times 30 feet high, I had 3 floors I had 2 parts I had the whole front. The only thing I didn't have was the front doors that they brought stuff in and out. And so, I had this side and this side. And then I had 3 floors, and the 2 floors above the ground floor, they were right across that. Right? So it was really a very sweet place. And I actually put a toilet and a shower in the front and put a PVC line going all the way, shit goes downhill. So I did it to the side and that's why I put a really nice bathroom back there and put a kitchen back there. And the guys just love that. I mean, the guy who owned the building, and again, there's a building that he wanted to retire. He wanted $100,000. It was a 12-story building with 2 elevators, big basement, a place where you could drive into the basement. And I brought my dad. Oh, this place sucks. Really? My dad. And, again, it was like a blessing because my dad had actually gone into all of the great deals I could have done with him. I would not be the guy you see today. Never would have gone to Australia, never would have traveled the world, never would have, I've been working to be a millionaire, And all the millionaires that were my buds, they were the most, because they had the most to lose. I have nothing to lose. Nothing really bothers me, At the very frigging worst, what could happen to me? I'd die. I've done it already 7 times. I'm not going anywhere until I've done everything I'm supposed to, because the last time I died, I was ready to go. I was tired. I knew things were fucked, and I didn't want to deal with it. And they would say, fine, not a problem, but you'll have to go back. Wouldn't it be better just to finish up the thing that you promised to do so you can move forward and not be caught in the wheel of karma? And I go, okay. So I came back. It's like this morning. I woke up to in amazing pain. That's the price I had to pay for 10 years of unbridled hedonism. And I must say, I do not feel any guilt or sorrow for all of that hedonism and pleasure, right? Not at all. Listen, I fornicated. No. I gave that up when I was, what age did I? 15. It was Christmas. I was, it was, I was still at the seminary. They hadn't tried to kill me more than once. And my parents still were sending me back there. And my cardinal godfather still had high hopes that I'd end up as a rocket scientist with the Pope. and at least be a bishop. And so, I came back and we take this bus and got off and I walked home. And it's like my parents didn't even realize I was home. It was like, can I say this apartment in the, what was it called? The Imperial House, right? It was a really nice place. And my parents had lived there for 5 years up to that point. So I knew everybody who worked there. And there was a really nice Chinese restaurant and a really fancy restaurant that it was like a hotel, and because elevator operators, they had a concierge, they had the whole thing. And they had a elevator for the help, right? And they had a thing downstairs that did your laundry. And so pretty much everyone had the service elevator. Everyone had service. And there was, by the service entrance, there was a little room where your maid would be able to sleep and have her own toilet. It was kind of like a cell. And anyway, that's where my parents put my grandma when she would come to visit. Anyway, so, I would come up the elevator, and they had, an automatic elevator, but still had an elevator operator. So a guy in a uniform would just push the button so you didn't have to. And he knew everybody, so he would just push the button, right? And so, I kind of, my parents had their own life. There was, right? And we never had meals, right? So, except on Fridays, Friday and Saturday, my grandma would show up and she would cook the Italian meal and we'd have that. And so I came home for Christmas, right? And took the school bus from up there in Connecticut and came all the way and ended up right there. And I'm realizing that I can do whatever the heck I want. So I'm already working to Fillmore East. I'm already working in theater. So I go visit my buddies and go, already working for the stalls, go visit Mike. And I already have these other little cubby holes, places that I can stay. But Christmas was a big deal in our family. So, and we would all decorate the place, whoop-de-doo. And now none of my brothers and sisters, when I was in high school, they had already married and going out and blah, blah, blah. Me, not so much. But still, I was, they never kept an eye on me. Never, what time are you going to be here? No, none, zip, zilch, zero, right? I'd be there or I wouldn't be there. It didn't matter. But on that one Christmas, when I was 15 and I'm going to a seminary, Jesus, God, and I'm realizing that, because I love God, I love Jesus, but being in the seminary and seeing how corrupt the Vatican and that whole scene was, and the Franciscans and the Jesuits and the buggering and the slavery and you name it, and I had a girlfriend, who just would have her way with me. And so I didn't, and, she was in a nunnery. And so we were the two bad apples of our two institutions. And, but that Christmas, Gina wasn't around. And so I was just walking down Lexington and I met these two people who were all dressed in black and had black capes and had really long blonde hair. And they looked at me and they were really tall and they said, "Do you want to know the secrets of the universe?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." Because I already knew a lot of them. I already had some mentors. I already, Madame Olga Kluver, who that lady knew the mysteries of the universe. And Billy Kluver, her cousin, he got a Nobel Prize for discovering background radiation in the universe, right? And bringing modern art. He curated the Armory Show. Go look that one up, the Armory Show, right? He was, both my science. He worked at the Council on Foreign Relations. So that was my in at the, he's the guy who introduced me to Dr. Quigley. And these were all people who made what we have the world to be today. and they were my friends and mentors. They treated me like an equal. I met Billy Kluver when I was 10. He treated me like an equal. Now, when he was like 50 something and I was 10, he had a Nobel Prize. He was the dude, and he was on the board of the Museum of Modern Art, board of, Museum of Natural History. He was on the board of, the big art museum in New York, in the Guggenheim. He was it, and he was my friend, mentor, and he treated me like an equal. Madame Kluver, who was like, that character that's in Star Wars, the one where Han Solo gets killed by his son, and they stop off at that planet of good times, and the lady running everything, instead of being Jabba the Hutt, was this little lady with the big glasses. Well, that was Madame Kluver, to a T, exactly. Height, she looked kind of like a cross between a Chinese lady and an ant. The only thing she didn't have was the antennas. And she had a curiosity shop, and her window was this concave window, so there was no reflection. So it looked like there was no window there, right? And the door was a door that was like an invisible door. And you'd walk, and if you weren't of the right motif, it wouldn't let you in. And the back wall of the whole store, which was half a block of Lexington Avenue, was a mirror. And it was an energetic mirror, like I talked about your energy, reflective mirror behind your eyelids. That's what that was, right? You could walk through it if it would let you, and you'd go on dimensionally on the other side. And I was experiencing this stuff from 9 on. These people were in my life from age 9 on. And from 0 until then, I lived with my grandma in Harlem, and there were a whole bunch of people up in Harlem, like Mamo, this woman who was like unbelievably brilliant Black woman, did amazing things during World War II. And then because she was Black and a woman, instead, they said, sorry, men are taking your job back. You can't run the hospital anymore. You can't do this anymore. Can't do that. You're Black. You're a woman. Sorry. But I did the best job this place ever saw for 5 years, and now I can't do that job. Nope. You can be a maid, maybe. So she started up her own little healing center in Harlem, took care of everybody who couldn't get any health care from anything else. So, and that lady lived above my grandma, and she was Black as this coat is black, right? And she had a little baby about 3 months before I was born. Then I was born, and my mom nearly killed me by giving me formula, where the box had more nutrition than the formula. And my grandma just, once I electrocuted my mom at 6 months old, my grandma just picked me up and took me out, right? And I stayed with her until I was between 6 and 7. I came back around then. So Mama was upstairs, and, Grandma couldn't breastfeed me, so Mama took care of me. So from 6 months until a year and a half, I lived upstairs with Mama. So I was a little white boy who lived with a really Black family. And they were one of the highlights, the high points, the elite of the Harlem Renaissance. The culture that people playing music and reading poetry. James Baldwin was there all the time. People like, so I've been around this my whole frigging life. And I was like, the guy, Steve Martin in The Jerk, I was brought up, I am an African-American that's melanin challenged, And, my twin sister, who was, she was the little baby on this breast of Mammo's breast, and I was on the other one, right? And we were together till I went back to my parents, and we stayed buds, still are, right? So I'm in my 70s. So she's had 5 kids. She has a PhD. She was in the military. She left as a major. Pretty amazing. That whole family was amazing, right? And they did not complain. They just pursued being their best. And that's where I got that from. Right? My grandmother and Mammo's family and everyone around me, right? The only people who never did their best were the people in my family, right? My father, my mother, and my siblings. They, did neuroses. They were just neurotic. I'm an Aquarian, Jess. I'm an Aquarian's Aquarian. I can't get any more Aquarian, right? I'll give you that. Right? So, and I'm a Chinese dragon. So I'll give you that. So, and I'm glad to know you, Jess. I'm glad to know the cadre. The cadre is the best. I don't care that it's not thousands of people. What I love about you guys is the quality of your character. And you're all over the planet, right? So, and we are going to do amazing things together, right? We're going to start the Institute for Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technology. And we're going to have it all over the world. And we're going to have the traveling video art circus that will be umbrellaed under that. And that will be the artistic arm of the Institute of Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technologies. And that's what's wrong with our technology. None of it is aesthetically adept and appropriate. It's all about the bling, the power, the ego. And those are all illusions, right? So, I'm doing all this amazing stuff. And so I'm a Black man, African-American, that's Melanin Challenge, and I'm living in Newark, right? And I'm head of this whiter than white engineering school's theater department. And across, just down the hill, is whiter than white bourgeois, white people college, and Rutgers. And right across the street from my theater is blacker, right on College Avenue, theater, sidewalk, curve, street, curb, sidewalk, high school, right on College Avenue, right? And on top of the hill. And that is blacker than black, right? That whole side of the college property is black. And they got a big fence to keep those black. But they didn't put no fence around where the theater was, right? Because I'm on top of the hill. And so there's only one staircase, and the fence went down there where the staircase was, and they'd lock it. But the theater, totally accessible. So the people from Rutgers just came up the sidewalk and went into the theater when they did stuff when I wasn't there, right? So that spring is happening, and I'm up there with my binoculars scoping out what cute girl or woman or person or what things I can spin up and have a good time with. And I'm looking down, and I see coming up North Street up to College Avenue in the high school is this ebony goddess. And she's wearing this tight, and she's got a body that, right? And it's like a spandex kind of material, and it's all African, the kind of African weave of orange and green and all that kind of African kind of, they make. But this thing is a spandexy kind of dress that you just kind of stick on like a sock, right? And it cuts way down to here. And she has got these things, and you can see the little unbelievable. And the dress comes just between her knee and her hip. And she has an afro that's out to here, and a face that is like a goddess, right? An ebony queen. And she's not too dark. She's like, just right, and she's got these full lips and this and this kind of cute little feline nose, and just but and it kind of flattens out at the end, so it's quite African, but still it's a little feline nose, and the beautifulest eyes, and oh, just, and I'm just like, and I'm on the roof. I run, I go to the elevator. Luckily, the door is like, hit it, bingo, door opens. I go down, I go out, and she's coming up, and she's walking across in front of me, and I'm just at the front door going, and she goes up the steps, and I'm looking up at her legs, and they just don't end, and she's going up, 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 and I'm like, and I kind of, she goes through the door, and I'm like frozen in awe, and I don't know how much time goes by, but I kind of run up, and I hear this click, click, click. There's nobody in the school. Click, 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 click of high heels. She's got these gigantic, spiky high heels, and but she's out of sight. But I hear the clicking, and I follow the sound. My ear radar picks it up. I follow it, go downstairs, and I kind of lost where she was. So it takes me a walk up and down the aisle, and there's nobody there. And I realize these are all kind of, classroomy, kind of shoppy kind of things. And so I go down to the one side, the other side. I go a little further, and there's this big hallway with these big doors, and they're open, and light is coming through, right? And so I go down there, and there she is, and she's got a bunch of kids, and they are doing a scene from Midsummer's Night Dream, right? Puck's little thing, and all the fairies and everybody running around, and I'm in the back of the cafeteria just watching this, and the kid, who's a girl, but acting like a boy, or Puck, so what is Puck? It's a fairy, so a sprite, what gender, who knows? I mean, it would fit today's time. It was a woke moment. And so I'm there listening, and the kid, he's not reading it. He's not, he's like, he's living that character. It's like, now, I've been in a lot of theaters, Lincoln Center, HB Studios, City for the New City, Theater for the New City, Living Theater, you name it. I've been part of those. This is like better, as good or better than any of those high school kids, and their major domo, their teacher, their the leader of the pack is this ebony goddess, and she's got her back to me, and I'm seeing, and her back is as amazing as her front, and I'm like looking at that, but I'm watching the kid do that scene from Shakespeare's Midsummer Night Dream, the end scene, and I'm just like, I'm like transfixed, taken to another dimension, and it's over, and no one said anything, and I just start clapping, like amazing, it was like, ah, and she turns around and says, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm the theater guy from across the street. That's my theater. I'm the director. You guys are amazing." And she looks at me and goes, "You're the guy with the grotto. I've heard about you. Get out." I said, No, please, no. This is amazing. I want everyone right now, let's go across the street. I want to show you the theater. I want to make this theater your theater. Instead of this cafeteria, your theater. So she's smart enough. She doesn't hold, like, white guy, grotto guy, I heard him, No, she goes, okay, let's go. Come on, kids. So they all kind of pack up, put their stuff away. About 20 or 30 of them, we all go there. I got the key. And I open up the door, hold it up, and walk in. Big doors into the theater, goes down, big stage. It's like, wow. I walk them in, we go through this door, and it goes up and comes out the term on stage left. And I just do the whole show, right? Take them all the way to 2 shops. There's a scenery shop on one side and the costume shop and prop shop on this side, and then staircase that goes out up to the next floor where all the classrooms are. We learn about all this stuff. There's a theater library. There's a film library. And I just go on and on and on and show them everything. I said, this, and then I take them up to the grotto. I said, this is the grotto. It's not bad. It looks, it's got a pool. It's really fun. You can go swimming. You can get a suntan, have parties up here. And I go, I want you to use this. I've had this for a whole year. I offered classes, no one. And I said, listen, I work in the theater. I can get your kids apprentices, in the IBEW and NABIT, IATSE. They all want younger people. They all want people of color. They all want women. This is a great opportunity. Let's do this together. Let's do something really better than each of us can do. We're both pretty amazing people. Let's do something together. And she and this is like within 2 hours of me going, she goes, you're not a white guy, are you? And I'm like, I go, no, I'm an African-American that's melanin challenged. And she goes, I was ready to really hate you, but there's something about you that I just like. And you just kind of scratch something on me that makes me itch. I said, I'll be there. I'll be there. Honest. And so from that minute on, she was my goddess and my queen. And I was her Jacoby. I was her servant. I was like there, whatever it was. Okay. It was never anything a question. She was in charge. So that was, spring semester starts. We start, I tell my supervisor, listen, you really like what I did with, the college down below and how that culturally. Now that they have a theater department at a high school that is like off the frigging hook. And this is a state school and they just had riots here. Don't you think this would be, the guy goes, yes, it sounds like the thing that we should use that theater for, because he knew what was going on, right? He just liked the fact that I made him look good without even trying. He said, this will make me, because he wanted to be president of the school. So I said, okay, we're all good. And I said, I'm still offering the classes. And any of the kids who want to do theater and did it with these kids, this would be pretty amazing. And I'm going to get all of my connects in Broadway and theater and that. I'm going to really mix this up. And he said, okay, I give you the seal of approval. And he goes, I'm your supervisor. I'm giving you the seal of approval, but we're going to keep it on the down low. We're just going to do it just like you did with, the college across the street, down the hill, we're going to do it the same way. I mean, you didn't even tell me you were doing any of that, but it turned out so good for me that because this guy was smart. Like I said, he wanted to go further and he was going further just by what I was doing with this thing. Because nobody was like a hot potato to that theater. Nobody wanted to take it. So he did. Could have really easily been totally gone south, but it was in clover. So we did this, and so I am this queen's prince, right? And that's what she used to call me, Prince. And so and she used to also call me doctor, and again it was like Doctor Who. You go, Doctor Who? What is he a doctor of? And she was go, he's doctor of everything. He's the fix-it man. So so we became, and so her father was a minister. She kind of lived there. She was 26 years old, had her master's degree, and she was saving her money, and she was paying her parents. She was the only one who was making a serious salary so she didn't want her family to lose their house, so she was paying their mortgage, right? So she had her place, right? So she had a nice place, had her own entrance, but her father was a minister and had a church, so what she could do whatever she wanted, just not do stuff like that in their house, right? He didn't even call it his house; he called it their house. And I met him, and we got along great. Her mother really loved me. Her brothers really loved me. They were all can-do people. They all had business careers, you name it, they were doing it, right? And they were all a thing in the community, right? So how I get placed in the community is right downtown, right on the line between the Portuguese section of Newark and the black section of Newark, was this old Masonic lodge, gigantic building, gigantic, right? And these women were ministers, and they were deacons or whatever a female deacon of their church in my queen's father's church was, and they were really amazing. And they were three ladies, and one was about 48, the other one's about 60, the other one's about close to 80. And they were all amazing musicians. They could play any instrument and could sing like you couldn't believe. And they had their own church, and they went Pentecostal. And so it was like, a night at the it was just a show, like unbelievable. So they had these Hammond B2 organs with Leslie's, which are the big rock and roll organ until digital things came, right? Everything was tubes, and they had one of those at the Fillmore East, and I was the guy who took care of it. So I learned how to do that. And at Sun Dragon and A&R and this place down on Tin Pan Alley had the same thing, and I would fix those. Those were clients of mine. I would go in and fix them. And that's how I got into recording studios, because the frigging Hammond B2 organ and Leslie were as complicated as any board, because it had all kinds of pots on it that you could adjust. It was almost like a synthesizer, but totally analog. So these ladies had like 6 of these things, and like one worked. And so I got 4 of them working, and the others were like for spare parts. And they had the most amazing back. I mean, it was a Masonic lodge. So there were tons of apartments and rooms and offices and you name it. So there was this great space that came off of, I forget what avenue it was, but you could get it. It was its own street, but the only thing on it was the Masonic lodge, so no one used it. And they had gates there too. So you could enter it from the Portuguese side, or you could enter from right on the line, right next to the place. It was like where you drove in, and they had the big entrance, and people got out of their limousines and went up. And so this was a really fancy place. So it was, like Sunday, they had the big show. It was like going to the Apollo. Everybody dressed up. And you could, in their main hall, you could stick 2,000 people in there easy. And it had this great stage that was almost on, it was 200 feet long. It had termers on either side, and it had a backstage and a place to, that thing had where you could unload scenery, bands, you name it, onto the backstage. Anyway, so if you ever seen the movie The Blues Brothers, and they're getting the band back together, and James Brown is the minister, and it's just like that, but bigger. And these women were way better than James Brown, right? And they had people, doing gymnastics, flying through the air, doing somersaults and throwing flags and eating. I mean, it was like a show beyond, these mega churches had nothing to come across. And people, these ladies were not hurting for money. So I fixed and the place was built in the 20s, so it needed work. And so she, two of these ladies were like her grandmas. And so, so that was where I lived. And they gave me an amazing apartment, I had the grotto, which was an amazing apartment across from the high school. So this girl and I did not, her parents were like, oh, she's not buying. No, she was, she was a grown up. She had her own life, and she's paying their mortgage, right? And keep her daddy's church alive, pretty much. So, and she's taking care of all these kids. She had a cadre that was unbelievable. So mostly young girls, right? And mostly gay guys, right? And I said, you're going to need some more testosterone in the kids here. And she goes, yeah, but I tried and they don't want it. I said, no, you just haven't hit it right. I go, you got to sell this. And she goes, well, who should I sell it to? I said, the football coach, the basketball coach. She goes, what are you talking about? Because both of those, sports, you have to not only run and hit and jump, but you have to be like a ballerina or ballet, you're a dancer, So I'll go to those two coaches and explain that I will take all of their boys into the theater department. A, they're all these really good looking girls. B, I'm taking everyone to Juilliard, and I'm going to have Carl Off, who taught me how to dance, how to have them all dance, how to move in the theater. And that means they will be able to move better than anybody else on the basketball court. That means they will move better on the football field. And she goes, I think you got some. So we got about 20 guys, and I, went in front of both those, teams. I said, okay, I don't know if you know me, but, I'm double Dr. Al Bob from across the street, and I'm here working in your school in the theater department with Queen Nezabatemana, right? She had an African name. And so we need some real men in the theater department, right? And because they'd all knew that it was all girls and all the gay guys, right? And so I said, you may go, oh, but listen, everybody who wants to go to college, and then maybe go to the big show, yes, you can run real fast. Yes, you shoot really good. Yes, you can hit really hard. Yes, you can do all those things. But you watch TV, you watch those guys. They spin around, they jump up, they fly through the air. You need how to do that. And I'm going to teach you how to do that. Plus, there are all these really girls over here who would just love to know you guys. Wouldn't you like to have one of them as your girlfriend, or maybe three of them? And they're all going. So about 20 guys signed up immediately, right? And so they called me coach. They called me a coach. All the other grown-ups who they really identified with, they called coach, right? So I was coach. That was my other nickname, coach. What do you coach? I coach life, right? So I basically have my own, I'm like, Kunta Kinte, and these guys would hang out in my office on the ground. When you walked into the lobby, right, there was, one side went into this hallway that had classrooms all over there, and there was a kind of desk in front of that, and there was a ticket booth there, right? And then on the other side, there was my office, right? And it was like the office of the whole theater department, but I just made it all my office. And I made what had been, built to be the officey part of that as my queens. I mean, I got an office, she got everything else. And there was three other, officey things with a door you close, and then a big space, big open space, right? And so we made it. We got a nice carpet. We put, rattan chairs and zebra skins and spears. Made it very African. I lit it very nicely, and couches everywhere, and kids could come there from the theater department, from any department who wanted to. They had to do culture. They had to make music, had to read, write, and we had computers, not quite there yet, but I got some IBM typewriters that, the ball, so there was places they could type, they could do homework. I had a bit of a library there, and so kids could come and hang out there. You could easily have 30 kids there comfortable. And we made a kitchen there, and it just, right. My queen had her office right next to my office. We had a door between the two. We actually had a whole nother office that was like our private space. We had a nice bathroom there. We could shower and bathe, and I remember some teacher came in and noticed, why do you have such a bathtub? It's like, I said, no, it's what is known as a hot tub. Me and my queen loved that hot tub. And not quite as groovy as the one on the roof, but so anyway, we were having, by the time summer, we were in the groove, and we had kids at Juilliard, we had kids at Brooks Van Horn, which is the world's greatest scenic and costume and prop company in the world. It, facilitates Broadway and the film industry, and Naboth and IATSE. We had about 40 kids that summer in that, right? And so the unions loved it. It looked great for them. The business loved it. The Broadway guys loved it. Vincent Moran, who started, Ticketron, got in on it. So it was really happening, right? And my queen and I couldn't have been happier than anything, right? And I had the year before, because of the college down the hill, I met a really interesting woman, Eileen Mraz, the Mraz sisters. And she was like brilliant. And she worked for Johnson & Johnson. She's getting her PhD at Rutgers. And I met her, right? And I brought her up to, she was my first sweetie from the first days, right? So, she got that, and she invented a certain process, and that was her PhD thesis. And, she had done that twice, and she didn't get her PhD because Johnson & Johnson took her process, and we own it. You'll have to do something else to get your PhD, because she wasn't a guy, She would have got her PhD and been put in charge of something, but because she was a woman, they treated her like a slave. So anyway, that's when I turned her on to a lawyer friend of mine. So when they did that again to her, she sued the crap out of them, and she got her PhD, and she got a nice stock option, and she went to California. And when she went to California, she turned me on to her next sister and her next two sisters. So there were three, the Mraz sisters: Eileen, Nancy, and Maryland. And Nancy was at University of West Virginia at wherever that place is, up there in the middle of West Virginia. And Marilyn was still at home. Her father worked for the railroad, was a drunk. Her two brothers were drunks, and they were just cruel, mean, spirited, terrible people. And so she hung out in the theater, and my queen took Marilyn as a girl to protect. And so Marilyn stayed with us, and I had before I went off to California, Eileen had left. Nancy kind of got the scratch with me, and I used to go drive the college car. This is where I got into the idea. You know, I've been driving this car to to Maryland, not Maryland, to West Virginia every weekend to go visit Nancy. You know, I should, you know, so what happens, she graduates in the winter, and she joins, you know, what do you call that place? You know, where they send people to do good things. You know, Jimmy Carter's mother joined it. Anyway, not Vista, but the international version of Vista. So anyway, she went off, and that's, you know, when I came. That's when I took my little road trip. Then I came back. I met my African goddess, Marilyn. We were taking care of Marilyn, and so the next year, and so the next year starts. That was summertime, and next year starts, and whatchamacallit, you know, I'm there, right? So I'm teaching, you know, I'm teaching all the high school kids. I'm, you know, and there's kids coming up from Rutgers who are teaching that, you know, and now there are a few kids from, you know, Newark College of Engineering who are taking, because it's so much fun and so interesting. And so, I mean, they kind of got into the music stuff that was going on there. And so I, you know, am now living in Newark, and, you know, living in the downtown, right on the, and I get to know the people in the Portuguese section, and boy, do they have some good restaurants, right? On that back entrance on the main road of the Portuguese section, all these great restaurants, and they're like, you know, 100 feet from where I'm living in this Masonic Lodge, my own little apartment, big apartment, like, you know, at least 2,500 square foot. I mean, gigantic rooms, beautiful kitchen, dining room, and about 4 of these kind of, they did something interesting. I mean, it was all mahogany and you know, velvet drapes and interesting furniture. They had this gigantic, amazing bed that was surrounded by mirrors, and, you know, really, what were you doing? I mean, you could have 20 people on this. I mean, it was a gigantic bed. So my queen really liked it. Very comfy. The sheets were pretty amazing. So, and it had its own laundry. I mean, it was just pretty good. Yeah, 0 rent. Amazing food, and I just kept fixing their restaurant equipment and get free food. So it was, you know, the best of times. And then the Newark riots happened, and that was like off the frigging hook. And it was really a sad time. But we were doing great things, right? And the Newark College was, so for about, so the riots happened. We're still doing the thing. End of that semester, she and I get, Brendan Byrne gives us an award for being the greatest teachers within the state system for education quality, cultural quality, and racial harmony. I mean, we get, and she gets, you know, we get a gigantic, we start a nonprofit, and the state gives it a big grant and gives us a gigantic bonus. And I give her all the money because I got a ton of money. I don't need any more money. Because I've been getting paid for 5 people for 2 years and really haven't spent anything. You know? We meet Brendan Burns, we get in the newspapers, right? And we got all the kids, and we just don't have black kids, but we got white kids and black kids and Chinese kids and Portuguese kids. And it's, you know, just what Martin Luther King wanted, right? And it was actually Martin Luther King came and visited. Was it? No, yes, no. it was, yes, after he died. Who came? I guess Loretta King might have come. But a number of black, interesting cultural folk came. So anyway, we were in high continence, they said. She gets many raises, she becomes part of the state cultural whoop-de-doo and everything. And we're still king and queen, right? Still coaching. So, but I am like Huey Newton. I am totally the African American who's melanin challenged, and everyone in Harlem, because we do stuff. Whoops, we did things at the Apollo. I mean, we did stuff all over New York and New Jersey, right? And it was just everything was amazing, right? Because the secret of being amazing is just keep doing it. Don't go, I'm afraid, I'm scared. No, just keep doing it. Move forward. Yeah. So, and during this period, not only am I doing that, I'm still doing art in New York. I'm still doing tons of stuff in New York, and I'm mixing all these kids and all of this stuff, and it's just, and because of the PATH train, a dime they could get from college to the high school to New York to the West Village for a dime, and then get on the subway for a dime and go to Juilliard or any of the other places that we were going. And I got them a New York City student ID through Juilliard, which allowed them to ride the subways and buses for free, right? So, and they were had jobs. They were getting, all the kids who were working at Brooks Van Horn, all the kids who were working with Naboth and IATSE, they were getting a salary and a career, and a way to go to any one of the New York City colleges. They were all going to go to Juilliard. They were all going to go to NYU. They were all going to go to Columbia, right? That's kind of how, through my Marion Tulin, my mentor, right? And through, Billy Kluver and the CFR, because they were looking for, these were all things they wanted to do, right? Again, I am not against Mr. Global Only. It is just when Mr. Global Only wants to run it like, Animal Farm. No, it doesn't matter who's running this. I mean, there's a very little difference between, Star Trek and Animal Farm. Very little difference. And the difference is humanity. When you let the reptile mind run it, you have Animal Farm. When you have the mammalian loving heart run it, you have Star Trek, right? So that's what, Mr. Star Trek, what's his name? The guy who started Star Trek. His name is escaping. Anyway, that's where we should be. And a good portion of us is heading in that direction. That is the momentum. It's just the inertia of the reptile brain that's holding us into this very strange place, right? And this is a very strange, this is a null point, right? This is a set point in time. And we either get through it, get by it, and become stronger for it, and love reigns, supreme, or we'll get stuck in a loop. And that's what the Dark Ages were. 900 years of a nasty, stinky loop, right? And that's why I'm doing this YouTube, to tell you a story, right? To get you involved, to get you understand that you don't have to let the parasite in. When you see at people who, I hear all these things in my head, that's letting the parasite in. The parasite feeds on fear. feeds on anxiety, right? And that's what, it's your fault. You're making me do this. No, you're allowing the parasite in, and then you feel so bad about this that you have to blame someone else, your parents, or someone who cares about you, or someone who loves you. That's the people you attack. So I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm going to throw in Alan wants the story about the aliens, and so Bono wasn't there, but because I had worked in the nuclear industry, and as 6 years old, my dad took me to an above ground nuclear test in the Nevada test site. I kind of understood what nuclear war would be, and so some friends, from old folks and some friends who had been in the anti-war movement, which I had been in, and I just was disgusted with the anti-Vietnam War movement because it was part of the local opposition, the loyal opposition. If you've ever seen, Forrest Gump, and he gets his little medal of honor, and he's walking through, and they're having an anti-war rally, and there's the big speech, and he sees his girlfriend Jenny, and she's being throttled by this jerk who's wearing bits and pieces of a military uniform, and he looks like a clown. He's going to give a speech, and it's all about him, and and Forrest goes and, kicks his butt. Well, that's how I felt about the anti-war movement. I had been in it, from, as a youngster, at 14, when I went up to, Bishop Kaufman's, he had this amazing church that I used to go to with Mamo, when I lived in Harlem. It's right on the edge, right where Columbia is, and all these amazing theologic colleges. And Kaufman had one of them, and he had a big facility, and he let any organization that wanted to do something good for humanity. So every anti-war movement was in the basement there. And so I was very familiar with the anti-war movement, and I got to observe it, because I was younger than all these people, but I was hanging out people who were a lot more interesting than those morons, and except for the brothers. There was two sets of brothers: the guys who were the devil incarnate, the guy who started the CIA and who was the Secretary of State, and then there was the other two brothers, the Berrigan brothers, who put out the Pentagon Papers and had stayed true blue to the anti-war movement. They're the guys who broke into a nuclear lab and put blood all over nuclear triggers, right? So and then they went to prison for that, right? So Henry Kissinger never went to prison, he sure should have. So when I came back from New Mexico, before I got this gig to be run the theater department, I was, forget the Vietnam, because the Vietnam War was still going on. The fall of Saigon didn't happen in 1975, and we didn't finish fighting that war until 1982, because the war was about drugs and oil and tourism. That's what it was about. So we basically, I came back. Forget that. What's important is, the constitutionalness of nuclear war and, COG, this entity that control of government after a nuclear war. It was set up by Truman, but because Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney got a hold of it, they're now running our government. That's why things are so weird. It's, when you talk about the deep state, you're talking about COG, and they own all of the DUMBs, the deep underground military bases, anyway, so I was against all of that. I had seen it firsthand in New Mexico and through my father. And I said, we have to stop this. So that's what the the no nuke um, movement was about. And so I got very involved in that. And we did a number of events, for peace, right? And then I got involved in the Newark scene and that whole scene. And so I'm doing all of this stuff, and I'm mixing all of these kids all the way through all of this, and it's working out great. And I'm having the best of times. And we're taking care of Marilyn, the last of the Marat sisters. And she's still in high school, but she's going to go on to college because she's really gotten into theater, and she's really great. And she's, going to go to Juilliard. And the Queen is going to take care of her. And she's got these Black sisters. I mean, she is, again, an African-American that's melanin challenged. She is so feels at one with everyone in our theater department in Newark that she's not at home. So one day she comes back and she's got, she's a really beautiful girl. And her nose has been broken. She's got a scar across her cheek, and both her eyes are black, and her teeth are knocked out. And I basically, and I get a phone call. The Queen is there, and I come in, and there's Marilyn, and she's all beat up. And what has happened is her father and her brothers. She hasn't been at home. She stays with the Queen. She's going to go on to college, and her father has no control over her. So she comes home once to get some stuff, and her brothers rape her and beat her, and so does her father. And I go to the police with her. I take pictures of her, and I go to the police, and they go, "There's not much we can do about this. The family thing." I said, What, you nuts?" And they go, "There's nothing we can do." And I said, "Well, is there anything I can do?" And this one police captain goes, "Well, you're a pretty well connected guy, because he knows all the connections I have in New York, with those guys, and he knows what I'm doing in Newark and after the riots. And I've gotten this amazing, the governor loves my ass, the mayor loves my ass, he goes, "Well, yeah, we can't do anything, but you can, So I said, "You want me to do your job?" "Yeah. In this instance, you're already doing half of our job with everything else you do. So yeah, why don't you, just, we don't like those guys. They're just trouble all the time. If you could do something about it, you wouldn't get, it'd be okay. Just, that's the way, you do something about it." And I said, "Okay." So I get so one of the football star guys who's learned to dance really loves Maryland, and he loves her like his little sister, right? Because she's kind of a Dominion, not a big tall girl, but, and so anyway, I call up a friend of mine who's a, plastic surgeon and, orthodontist and the whole thing. And the Queen and a few others take her into, over to that guy's place, and he goes, "Oh, this, we can fix all of it. We have pictures of her before this," and he goes, "I'll make you look better than that." He goes, "Not a problem. This is, yeah, you got beat up pretty bad, but you have no real structural damage. So we can take care of all this. And, your teeth were okay, but I'm going to make them look perfect. We can, not a problem, And so the girls are there, and me, about 10 of the brothers, we get into this kid has a black van, right? And we drive, and they live not in a good neighborhood, not even a white neighborhood. They live in a kind of poor trash of everybody, right? And that's kind of why they live in with everybody trash, not just white people trash, but everybody. So it's a very camouflaged neighborhood. So I've been to that house many times. I know the house well. I know there's an alley, right? And there's no fence to their backyard. And that you can just pull into that alley, walk into the back door. And so we kind of wait, we pull up. We're not right in their property line, but over here in that alley, we wait and we see that all those boys and dad are there. And so two guys, there's a bunch of us, and we get out, and two guys go to the side of the house and to the front, and two guys towards the back of the house. So there's 360 observation of everything, and four of us go in with baseball bats, and we take care of things, right? For a long time, right? We go in and just take them out, then tie them up, and then do things to them that stick in their mind so they don't touch those three girls ever again, period. Because all three, Marilyn wasn't the only one, she got beat up, but the others got beat up too, Marilyn, because she was small, she kind of stayed out of harm's way. She was, as I was as a young boy, as a peanut, I was good at being invisible. But when her two older sisters who were bigger than her and ran defense for her were gone, and they felt safe enough that I was watching out for her and that I took her out of that house, and she was staying with the queen. They had met the queen, and so, it was all, they thought it was okay. I didn't realize this was going to happen. But we took care of business, and, there was no ramifications, and, we just, spent a good many long time that evening, pressing it upon them that, they should never, ever even think about treating any woman or any other person other than each other. You could kick the crap out of the three, dad, you can go after your boys go after dad, but nobody else. Do not touch anybody else, period. Because you'll be watched. We left. And a couple of days later, I was coming up from the, path trains, and the captain, who I met during the riots, and I was like, I couldn't believe what the frick is going on. So, and I stepped into it, and the guy, and they were like, because people, the folk who were very upset and going to burn the friggin' place down, I said, no. You have family, you have kids, you don't want to do this, and you'll be blamed, and it's their fault. Do not do this, and we're going to fix this, and we did. After that, that's when Newark kind of came back, right? And it had a lot to do with the Queen and all those kids going to all. By the time I left, we had 600 kids off to colleges, working in theater, and we had a whole mechanism moving through that high school, through the grammar schools, to that high school, into the college, at Rutgers. It was all a well-oiled machine, right? And of course, for me, once I fixed the machine, it's like all done. It's like, okay, now what do I do? And the Queen and I had got to this place of like, meaning it was pretty obvious that we weren't going to get married and have kids. It was really obvious that we were great at being this entity that was greater than us, and we were just kind of going along, and everything was great. And I was living downtown in the Masonic Lodge, and and that whole, you know, Portuguese and Chinese and black scene was actually hitting a nice synergy culturally, and the Masonic Lodge had become like an amazing place, not just a religious place. But anyway, it was all going great. And usually when that happens, you know, I'm a cheeky monkey. I throw, you know, a wrench into the work somehow, and I don't even do it cognitively, right? And so I basically, what happens is this guy comes in, and he looks like, you know, a little. He looks like Pee Wee Herman on steroids, and he's bald, and he's got glasses with tape on the side, and he's wearing a paisley jacket and a paisley bow tie and a white shirt and black pants and black shoes. And he comes in, and he walks straight in to, like, the lodge, the thing outside of the Queen's and my little ante room. But where's, the girls aren't there. It's just me and about 10 of the brothers, right? And there's a seat. Like I said, I'm in my Huey Newton phase, and I'm wearing a black turtleneck, a black leather jacket, a beret, and, dark sunglasses. I got rid of the mirrored sunglasses, and, dark pants and dark shoes, right? That was my, my black power look, and so we're talking about this, that, and the other thing, just, and this guy comes in looking like that, and we just kind of look at him, and he goes, what are all these niggers doing here? And I said, excuse me? And he just goes off, just N-word, 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 just, the monkeys, and just, and the guys are looking at him and looking at me. And I said, buddy, you either get out of here or you won't be happy. Then he just goes off. And I said, guys, I'm going to go into my office. You can take care of this, man, can't you? And so they do. Anyway, so I'm in my office, and about an hour later, the phone rings. And I have, after the, the Newark riots happened, I put video cameras all over the place, because we are right out. We don't have a big fence around us. We have nothing to protect us. And when the Newark thing happened and we were doing what we were doing, there was a white backlash of sorts. But so many people came up from Rutgers to stand in the way of those morons that, they backed down, and that. But I put video cameras, and by this time, there was videotape, and I had some, so I had that rolling pretty much all the time. So basically, I went to the office, I sat, right, and I had, sitting there, and then, the guys came in and I said, so what happened to that guy? So we escorted him, out. I said, oh, okay. You didn't really do anything. No, we just picked him up and juggled him around and, escorted him out. We didn't really hurt him. We didn't do anything. We didn't beat him up. We just kind of, freaked him out a little bit. Like when we picked him up, and he was so light, we just kind of twirled him around. And then we, carried him out and kind of, rolled him down the hill. And I said, okay. And you didn't beat him up? No, we didn't beat him up. Okay. So, because this was the same crew that we visited the Maraz household. And And after about, I don't know, a month after we visited the Ross household, that was probably in September, and we had a big event at the whatchamacallit, the church, the place that I was living in. Anyway, that big event occurred, and the police captain and a few other police came to the event and enjoyed the party and everything. And I was talking to the police captain, and he said, "Well, that was very good what you did, and we appreciate that." He didn't mention any names or anything, but there was only one thing I did when he said, "You should go take care of that." He said, "You." I like how that looks, don't you? Two little, it's got like two little black wings here with my toilet paper antlers. Anyway, see, anything can be a costume. So he said that was, you did perfect, just right. They people don't even know they're there anymore. You did the appropriate thing, and they're not, making any trouble for anybody. Period. Zero. I said good. So that was all good. So this event with the guy in the paisley jacket and paisley bow tie happened in the early summer. Like the school kind of had closed. It was, in the Mayish, June. It was June, right? And there's going to be summer school. I mean, the theater was never slept. It was still doing its thing. And but it quieted down. The high school was kind of closed. The college was kind of closed. I mean, they did stuff there, but not like school year. Same thing with Rutgers down the hill. They did stuff, but not like school year. So anyway, I'm this occurs. An hour or so goes. My phone rings. I go, yes, it's my supervisor, and I kind of show up, and he goes, that guy who you kind of roughed up? I said, the guy in the paisley jacket? And he goes, yes, that guy. And I go, so what's his story? He goes, he is the new chancellor. I said, what? I mean, just a year ago, Newark riots, you're having that racist motherfucker be the new chancellor of the school? And he wants to close the theater down. I said, it's never going to happen. And he goes, well, I told him that you videotape everything that goes on there, and that if he had done anything inappropriate to cause, I said, they didn't beat him up. They just picked him up and rolled him down the hill. I didn't hit him or do nothing. And I have videotape of exactly what he was saying. And he goes, yes, I told him that. I told him that you had videotape of everything. And I said, and you told him that the governor is my, yes. Oh, he knows. Yes. And this, yep. And all yep. And I told him that would be the worst of things, that the close down the theater and everything that's working so great. And he goes, I got a big favor for you to ask. And I said, what's that? He said that he had another offer, and he would take it if two things happen. And I said, yes, those two things are, A, I become the new chancellor of the school, which is exactly what I want, and B, you have to leave. And I said, otherwise he's going to make a stink and do all kinds, and the theater will close, and the school will, all those kids and everyone it will not be good. And this thing has been one of the biggest band-aids of healing the Newark riots. And I go, okay, not a problem. You'll be much better the chancellor than that moron. And hey, I got other things to do. So I go over and tell my queen. I said, "So this is what's happening, and you are going to." And what I said, "Okay, I'll do that. For the greater good, I'll do that, right? But I get all the money that's in my account. Period. Nothing. And I get all bonuses, whatever. I get everything. Plus, you're going to give me a stipend to leave, okay? And my queen, she becomes the forever head of the theater department, period. And that has to be in writing. And she needs to be the director. And she needs to get the salary of a director. She needs to have that kind of checking account that I have. She needs to have all of the above. She's just going to step into my shoes. And it's going to make you look great. You know that it's going to make you look great. It'll be the best thing. Okay? He goes, yep. So we worked that all out right then and there. Then I go and talk to my queen. I say, sweetie, this is what's going on. You are now, but that's not, I said, no, this is all for the best. And what we're going to do is take a vacation. What? Yeah, we're going to get in that little car that's now yours, and before what we're going to do is we're going to go down and get I bought some tickets to go to England. And we're going to go to England, then we're going to go to Scotland, and then we're going to take the ferry from Scotland to Northern Ireland, and then we're going to go all the way through Ireland, then we're going to take a boat from there back to England, then another boat to Gothenburg, and then we're going to go all through Europe, and take you all through Sweden, and then we're going to jump on airplanes from Sweden and go all over Europe. We're going to take 3 months and do this, just in time to come back to start school up with you. And she's like, I said, that's why I told you needed to get a passport. And I said, you got your passport, I got my passport, I got a lot of money, and you're going to have a lot of money, and it's all going to be hunky-dory. And, you're still going to be my best sweetie. She kind of said, okay, sounds good to me. Because by that time, she no longer, she was the boss. Everything she wanted, we did her way, all the way, right? But whenever I said, just like that, she said, okay, whatever you said. That was how she dealt with anything. And we never argued about anything, ever, right? And because she said, when I kind of, so we did that, and then I went, back and became the dude back in New York. I, left my stay of 2.5 years in Newark, and still, but she would come, and I had really nice places for us to stay in, and I had a nice cash flow. So whenever she came to stay with me in New York, I would always have a suite at either the two big fancy hotels in New York, or the one where Lexington Avenue, the Statler Hilton. No, it's the one that what's his name? Dali pushed the piano out the window in the bar. That was one of my favorite hotels. The one that's right off of I keep on saying Carnegie, but that's not it. The one that's right off of Central Park, right at the southern point of Central Park. Anyway, we'd stay at a very nice hotel whenever she came. So we did that for another. I had my New York thing, and I still did a lot for that school with people and kids and connections and stuff. And but by the end of the next year, she met a man that was going to be her husband. And that was that. And we became friends. And because I still kept my little or big apartment in Newark. Because, because all it took was a dime to take the PATH train. And, I could have parties in New York. I'd meet people at a bar. Okay, we're getting on the PATH train. And we go right to that place and go into my little apartment. First, go to one of my favorite Portuguese restaurants, and there's two that had really nice big private dining rooms, and I would just go in there and we'd have big dinner, and then we go and party till the night was way, and the girls would be upstairs playing the Hammond B organs. We'd be dancing and throwing flags around. It was a good 3 years. And that's what can happen when you take a situation and you're not fearful, right? You're not upset. So that's 1970. I moved back in beginning of end of 75, November 75. Actually earlier, so that event happened August or September when all of that happened. Then, or maybe it was even May or June, July. May or June, July, the event happened. My queen and I went to Europe for 3 months. We got back by mid-September, and I moved out. Actually, I moved in more into the Masonic Lodge and got reinvigorated back in New York, and was in New York. I moved to my I got a gig working for what's the name of that real estate company? I forgot, but their big thing was to buy old commercial buildings down in Wall Street and the West Side and turn them into specialized buildings for businesses or condos. Condos were just starting to happen. And so what was Sylvan Wellen Realty. And they bought a bunch of buildings down in Wall Street in the, with the oil embargo, 73, 74, 75. They bought about 20 really nice 1920s, 20, 30-story office buildings. Very nice, stuff, and a really good price. I mean, I don't think they paid more than $200,000 or $300,000 for like a 20-story building with like, 100,000 square feet in it, really nice. That, they were like, Wall Street is called Wall Street because it was, where the Dutch were, a little teeny thing. And then they built skyscrapers there. So it's all these canyons. And, but those buildings, they had a lot of these buildings that were either on the West Side and looked at the Hudson and then had the thing there. And they had about 20 buildings. And one of the buildings they bought was the Edison's first power plant on what's the name of that street? It's right off of Wall Street. It's it'll come to my mind. But anyway, so they bought it, and Edison built it like, it was a concrete brick building because it was power, big machines there, big steam engine in the basement. Pearl Street. It's Pearl Street Station, which Pearl Street goes right into the steps of the Wall Street steps of the place where they sell the stock exchange. Anyway, and the steps of the stock exchange is where our first president of the United States was sworn in on the steps of the New York Stock Exchange, which kind of gives you the heads up about what our country's about. So anyway, Pearl Street, right? So ground floor was going to be off-track betting, the first off-track betting place in America, right, where you could bet on any racetrack, first in New York State and then very quickly anywhere in the country, right? Next floor was a loft. That was, people were living in lofts. So this guy got the loft. He sold marijuana. Next floor, and that guy, his name was High, and he was a Rasta boy. The next floor was coke. No, first floor, second floor was cocaine, nice Jewish boy. Third floor, high, and fourth floor was a guy who sold meth and heroin. And then the top two floors were the belfry. These really, it's where all of these big wheels that had the big, whatchamacallit, steam engine down in the basement, and a gigantic drive up to the top where they had a big wheel, flywheel, and then they had this shaft that had other flywheels that took it off to other generators on all over the place on this 2.5 floors. It was about 60 feet from the floor where you walked in the door to the top, and it had all these amazing, it's like I said, the belfry, right? And it had all these flywheels. So for about 30, 40 years, they've been greasing it. So nobody wanted that floor. It was all covered in grease, axle grease and every kind of grease. And so I wired that building, and I kind of said to the guy, hey, I'm going to take over the top. No one wants to rent that. And, you're always saying I can live in your building. One of their buildings was a loft. I lived in on Warren Street in Soho. So anyway, I'm living down there, and he goes, sure, nobody wants that. I said, what? How are you going to live up there? It's all covered in grease. I'll figure something out. You know me, I'm Mr. Fix-It. So I had a buddy who was, I worked at this foundry, and we spray metallized, and Joe Battle Foundry, and we what we did, spray metallizing. I was the king of spray metallizing, and I would spray metallize statuaries that were cracked and rotting, and you had to repair them, otherwise they were going to fall over, right? So, and spray metallizing was invented after the Civil War, after they built all these steel bridges, and they overbuilt them, and the weight of the bridges, and they weren't protected from the elements, so they started to rust relatively quickly and started to fall apart relatively quickly. So all these railroad bridges that were built during the Civil War and just post the Civil War were starting to fall apart, like in the 1890s. And so they couldn't take the bridges down because the railroads were being used all the time. So they developed this spray metallizing process where they could spray metal like paint. And it was, they would prepare the surface. They would spray this one metal that would stick to the other metal really well, and then they'd put like a metal gauze over it and spray over that, and they do it in different directions, which would make it a lattice and give it unbelievable tensile strength, right? So that's how spray metallizing was invented. And it was, like I said, really good for statuary. And I was good at that, being artistic. I made those statues look really good, right? So we had a project where Joe gave a bid. The Woolworth building across the street from City Hall on Broadway was starting to fall apart because it was terracotta. And that was a building that was called the first skyscraper. It was like 40 stories tall, built in the 1890s. And so it was, almost as tall, if not taller than the Eiffel Tower. It was supposed to compete with the Eiffel Tower, but nothing can compete with the Eiffel Tower. It's an amazing building. And my queen, when I took her to Paris, I stayed in Paris once for a couple of weeks and found a really, really nice little, off the Champs-Élysées, a little hotel. And, it was really cheap. They gave you meals with your room, very nice rooms. It was almost a but it was a hotel, not a boarding house. You really couldn't stay there for more than a week. And I didn't want you there for more than a week because the boarding houses were a lot cheaper. And this was a lot nicer, fancier, and had a really great restaurant and bar, the thing out front where you could sit in the sun. And anyway, I took her there. We spent a week in Paris there, and when we went there, it was really an interesting time because there were a lot of Black people in Europe. France had, things in Africa, and, those people came, North Africa, they came. I mean, there were a lot of different races in Europe, but she was so strikingly amazing that people saw her as something like a piece of art. So she really got a lot of, wherever we went, she got an amazing, and because she, had been with me for almost 2 years, and I took her all over the place with lots of different people, and she already was cosmopolitan because of her father and her upbringing and her grandmothers, her grandparents, and so and that's why like within hours, she said, "I really hated you, but now I don't. I did something about that just you're making me itch." So I can scratch that. I can. Yep. So like from that moment on, for 2.5 years, it was it. And I had just been hanging with Eileen, and she'd gone up, got her a good lawyer, sued the shit out of Johnson and Johnson. She got a really great job in California, and after that, she was so involved in that we weren't that connected. And then I met the Queen, and those two met each other, right? I was still, and they got along great. And then when the Queen met the other two sisters, she was like strict, and she just, like, Marilyn became her daughter, her little sister, right? She was just, so it was truly an amazing, that was just a life right there. 2.5 years of a life, something that would take most people 70 years to have experienced. 2.5 years touched hundreds of people's lives. Still I'm in contact with a good deal of those people. The Queen is still around. Her daughters are, and her grandchildren are, and her great-grandchildren are. I really haven't heard from that family for at least 5 years, so I'm not quite sure. Once I kind of, longer even, when's the last time I heard from the Queen's family? Well, she got a hold of me when my parents died in 2008, so she's still alive in 2008. 2011, I kind of, when I went back to New York, kind of got a hold of everybody, and I saw her then. That might have been it. I haven't really. So there's, but there are a couple other people who, from that period of time, I'm still tight with. And that's the thing, to have friends that old, people that care about you, and and the thing about me is I go away and then I come back. And when I come back, like when I left so I left New York in 88, and I didn't come back until 2011. So 88 to 98, 98 to 2008. So, 20 something years, 27 years. When I came back in 08, it's like everyone that I bumped into, I knew it was like I just finished talking to them a moment ago. Meaning there was no lag. Oh, you look old. You're this. You're that. No, it's just. And I often don't, like a lot of you. I again. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. And if you want to get a hold of me at the dudeawake42 at Gmail, the dudeawake42 at Gmail. And, you can get a hold of my PayPal. I would love it if you put something in there. It's still February. It's still my birthday. I'd love to see a little cash there. And some more thumbs up. And let's get a few more. We almost got to 600. And it's fallen back to 400 and something. I mean, it's okay. I know all of you guys watch, and just some monkey at the controls there in the algorithm is like keeping it down on the farm. And that's why I say, guys, go put this, on some medium, because I have a good sense that by this summer, there's a old TV show, probably in the early O's. It was called Revolution. It was about The guys fooling around with weird science, and they do something that basically destroys electricity. It throws everyone back into the Civil War age, right? And I think something of that nature is going to occur, which will then precipitate this war in Europe is a stepping stone for someone to show up. And all our politics is so, everyone knows that. They put Biden in the reason because he's a moron and he's brain dead and he's a Stepford wife. He's like, oh, and every politician is like, forget about it. When Donnie Trump looks like like a brain surgeon compared to everybody else, there's a real problem. Look at the moron up there in Canada. He's destroying his country. One moron. He's declared a martial law. He's basically frozen the banks. The country, no one will touch the courts, the government, the banks anymore. Period. That'll be it. And virtually any other institution. And, to have a country like Canada, the most polite country in the universe, to treat its people this way is like, so it's all coming undone, but undone on purpose because they want this reset. And I call it the big splat. And that's where we're heading. The Dulles brothers. Yep. That's what I'm talking about. Those two guys did more harm to the planet than virtually anybody. So anyway, I'm getting hungry and tired, and I'm going to go. I did cooking this morning, so I made enough food for John and I until Sunday, And if he eats the way I do, and that is, I make these three. I made a big stew, a big soup, and a nice vegetable thing with shrimp and sausage in it for flavor. And you take a spoonful of that and you put it into a bowl and you put that in the microwave with a little chunk of cheese, and you zap it for 3 minutes. And you got an amazing meal. And I have, if you ate all that, so I made a big thing of that 2 days ago, and John sucked the whole thing up in one shot. If you eat, I eat 4 little bits a day. That's it, right? And I wait an hour and a half before, after I wake up, before I eat anything. I drink a lot of water all day long. Then at night, I eat something about 4 hours before I go to bed. Don't eat anything more. And I drink a lot of water before I go to bed. And I lose about a pound-ish, maybe half a pound a week, right? Maybe 2 or 3 pounds a month. That's it, And I feel better, energized, all the rest. So anyway, I will come back later this evening around, it's now about 3:45 here. So it's about, I don't know what there, 5 hours plus 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's 9 o'clock where you guys are. So in about 2 or 3 hours, I'll come back again, see if anyone shows up. And I'll tell you the story about the aliens that I was trying to get there. But I took the long way around. Rhonda, Alan, Jesse, Kendra, Tool Tradesman. Okay, gang. I'll see you later. Remember, drop anything you want in my PayPal. And it's thedudeawake42 Gmail. And also, if you can give me a phone number on WhatsApp or Vibe, or if you're in America, your phone number, I'll give you a call. I talk to a lot of you on the phone. But again, a lot of you, often I'm not in a place that I can receive a phone call or near a Wi-Fi. I've been doing a lot of this now because I have good access to it. So that's the story. And if I don't get back to you, it's only because, I'm going to go check out my email now, the dudawake42 at Gmail. And there'll be 50 spams, and I haven't checked it for 2 days. There'll be like 1,000 spams. It's like I'm not someone who looks at it. I when I drive, I keep all my phone off. It doesn't. I hate the pinging sound. So anyway, I love you guys. Talk to you later.